Hi, this is Joe from Endurance Mentors. This is vlog one of our lead up to Ironman Lake Placid. The goal for this blog is to provide some weekly feedback for all athletes out there who are specifically training for Ironman Lake Placid or anybody else who is just in the lead up to an Ironman and wants to kind of understand the rhythms, the ups and downs of training, the barriers, how to overcome them, some of those things you don't overcome. But the training process for an Ironman is a long one. And so we thought we could provide some weekly feedback in a blog format that some might find helpful. The other goal here is to make this evergreen. So the structure of this vlog is going to be, we'll provide some basic feedback on the week's training, the ups, the downs, what's going well, what's going poorly, what did we have to juggle, because that's a reality for a lot of us. And then at the end, what we can do is give some very specific feedback about the Lake Placid Ironman. I personally have been fortunate enough to finish the Lake Placid Ironman 5 times. This year will be my 6th. My wife and I are both training this year. And just like the rest of you, it's busy. We both work full time. We have 2 little kids. It's busy with their schedules, with our schedules, and actually making it all work is sort of the purpose of this vlog, and letting everyone know that you're not alone out there trying to pull this off. So without further ado, what I'd like to do is just get into where things stand right now. I started training back in November, and so did my wife. On a personal level, my training this year is looking a little bit different than it has in years past. The last 3 seasons, I was officially coached, and I was following a strict routine. This year has been and will be a little bit different. This year in our household, my wife is the one following a very strict routine, and I'm kind of training outside of those hours. As I mentioned before, we're busy, 2 little kids, swimming schedules, soccer schedules, all their stuff that's happening day in and day out can be a real challenge. And so balancing it all is kind of where we want to share some of our, or at least what we do well and what we do poorly at least to be transparent about that. Right now, I've been, if I can look back on my training over the last few months, right now we are 27 weeks out from Ironman Lake Placid. And if I think about my last few months, I can say definitively that my swimming has gone really well. I'm very proud of where my swim is. I'm getting good swim volume in. My biking is a little bit behind schedule, if I'm being honest. Um, I came off the fall running season and never just got going on the bike. I have been putting in miles. I've been putting in some good time on the trainer, but we're not quite where we need to be. And if I look back to last year when I was following a more structured plan, I'm frankly lagging behind a little bit. So I need to get creative and find some different ways to start to increase that bike volume. Running wise, I think I'm okay. I'm okay right now with run volume. At Endurance Mentors, we take running volume, a very slow approach to increasing run volume, because quite frankly, that's the area where a lot of athletes can get hurt. So I'm applying those same principles myself. So as I'm thinking about increasing run volume, there's no real rush in my particular book to do that. I'm not a natural runner as an athlete, so I tend to stick to base miles for a long, long time with running, and that's really where I've been. So I'm pretty happy with where I am on the run. Again, I mentioned that we're 27 weeks out right now. When I look back at week 28 last week, we did have some challenges that we had to address to fit in our training. We had a wedding, which we had to travel a few hours to. We had to swap some workouts around. That became a big challenge to try to fit in our long run and our long ride last weekend. Our long run definitely suffered. We were at a wedding until midnight the night before, and of course we were sleeping in an Airbnb. So, and of course we weren't eating enough. It's kind of a challenge, but we got it done. It wasn't a great run, but we did check the box. We ran after the wedding from the Airbnb the next morning. So we did manage to get about an hour and 10 minutes of running in. We came home Sunday morning. We were able to get our trainer rides in, so that was a positive. So despite the challenges that came up last week for us, we really thought that was a real good thing that we were able to get those kind of key weekend workouts in, especially those long aerobic workouts at this point. Next, as I look ahead to the week, I don't see any major scheduling conflicts. I am and trying to be aware of how last weekend's wedding and travel and back-to-back run volume is going to affect me. Um, I was able to get in a run this morning, which is great. Felt pretty good too, but I like to space out my running, so I probably won't run again for a few days. As we go through this vlog, you'll see I really try to hit the same workouts every single week. I try to just keep it very consistent and then increase volume slowly on the weekends. As we look ahead to this week, I think it should be okay. Looking at a couple run sessions, I'm going to target a few bike sessions, and then I'm going to fit in my typical 3 swim sessions. What I'm going to try differently is, because I'm a little bit behind on my bike volume, I need to figure out on a week-to-week basis, how can I better increase bike volume consistently? And I think really what it comes down to is I need to start adding an evening bike session in. I'm the kind of person that works out in the morning, and so doing things at night is hard, and I really wake up tired the next day, so I've been definitely hesitant to kind of get into that, but realistically speaking, there's really not another good way to do it. So what I think I'm going to target for this week is maybe Thursday night, have a swim in the morning, maybe a light run, and then a bike in the evening. Again, just with the goal of trying to increase that that bike volume. My overall volume, I should say, right now is probably 2 to 3 hours per week less than I was originally targeting. And a lot of that is just because I've been trying to just juggle, all the things that go along with training, right? So my goal for this week is to try to get that volume up a little bit and try to figure out a way not to just do it for this week, but to make it consistent week over week, and really get to a point where I can say, okay, I can replicate this and really start to increase the volume. Next weekend for the long workouts, a long ride on Saturday and a long bike on Saturday and a long run on Sunday. Don't have any issues right now on the schedule. We should be able to pull that off. Thankfully, we're going into the early part of this year, still very healthy, and feeling good about where things are pointing. So again, there's some barriers here. There's some ups and downs. We're trying to work it all out as we go. But what I'll do next week is check back in, let everyone know how the increased bike volume went, if I was actually able to pull it off with the schedule, and hopefully, continue along and continue to make progress. Okay, so that was the evergreen part of our conversation. Now, what I want to do is every week in our blog, I would really like to provide some basic feedback about the Ironman Lake Placid course. And quite frankly, I've been thinking a lot about the run and the importance of what we should be focusing on right now, especially. So, when I first started triathlon training, I was very focused on getting faster on my run. What I realize now, and I think many of you have probably heard this before, but the real key to doing well at an Ironman is it's not necessarily how fast you go, but it's how little you slow down. So I like to think of it, especially with running, in terms of resilience. How resilient are you running versus how fast are you? If you are running an 8 minute per mile pace, which is great and incredibly fast, the question is, can you hold it, right? If you run an 8 minute pace for the first half of the marathon and then fall off and then walk the back half, you're not very resilient. Okay, you'd be much better off probably running a 9:30 or a 10 minute per mile and just keeping it at that pace for the entire marathon. So right now, as I'm thinking about my training, I'm thinking about base miles, I'm thinking about basic aerobic miles, getting them in and then getting them in consistently. Think about keeping your monthly run volume about the same. I'm also, again, 27 weeks out, starting to think about how can we start to increase resilience? Can I run outside a little bit more? I live in Connecticut and the weather isn't always the best for running outside this time of year. It can be kind of rainy, a little bit snowy, sometimes icy. But can you get outside? Can you get in those hills? Can you, do some incline work on your treadmill? Anything like that that might be able to help increase your resilience once you do get into those really key training sessions, the last 12 weeks of training. I'm thinking also about the Lake Placid run course specifically and why resilience is so important on this course. The run course essentially goes out 6 miles downhill or trending down, and then turns around and runs that same 6 miles or 6.5 miles trending up. That's the run course. So the potential, especially on the back half of the marathon, for falling apart as you turn around and start to make your way back, and it's a lot of trending uphill, there's a big potential for time loss, especially on the back half of that marathon when your body is just done, right? If you've done an Ironman or if you've read about an Ironman, that's really where, your time is made. How little do you slow down on the back half of the run? So what I would do, take a look at the run course specifically, take a look at the back half of that loop, understand that is a tough uphill run for the vast majority of the way back in. All right. And instead of thinking about speed right now, try to focus your efforts on resilience. Think about how can I get most efficient? How can I get most resilient? And then be honest with yourself about what that pace is. Start to think about what is my pace right now? Should my focus be to drastically increase that pace? Or would that just come naturally if I work to be more resilient on the run course? All right, we're 27 weeks out. We have a lot more to go. We'll check in weekly. Please feel free to follow along, subscribe so you can just get pings when this channel when this channel is updated. And then what we can do is go week to week, talk about what's going well, talk about what we had to juggle to make it all work. We're all in the same boat here. There's a long way to go. Good luck training. We'll see you next week.